truly on behalf of, how's the sound? On behalf of Compassionate Care ALS, founded and directed by Ron Hoffman, who's here from the East Coast, from Massachusetts, with Jim Foster, who's also in town, who's making this event possible through what you're seeing as beautiful video testimonies. We want to say thank you for coming. One thing that ALS does really well is underscore the preciousness of time. And we are grateful that you have chosen to take the time to be in this phenomenal theater. It's had a lot of shows and a lot of life in this place, a lot of dancing and a lot of beautiful music. And that's our goal today, is to actually spread out for you what compassionate care is, why it is, how it is, and what it is that we are here in this region in Colorado to bring to families and support systems for families living with ALS and other neurological degenerative diseases. I want to thank the Boulder Theater and their team. I want to thank the Organic Sandwich Company. Those sandwiches are awesome. And Ozo Coffee for the coffee in the back. Part of extending hospitality is part of what CCALS does. So enjoy yourselves, find the food that you need and the drink, and enjoy being here. In the back also, we have a couple folks from The Natural Funeral. Karen Van Buren is a filmmaker, and her film that Ron introduced me to 10 years ago when my dad was diagnosed with ALS and was declining, and that's how I met Ron Hoffman, through Will Reller, who's also a chaplain in the house today. So the way that the web weaves itself in our lives, especially through the experiences that none of us would choose. None of us would sign on the dotted line for an ALS experience, either for ourselves or our loved ones. So in that way, this web of Will Reller knowing what my dad was going through helped me to meet and our family to benefit from what Compassionate Care and Ron brought to the table. And in that way, Karen's film, Dying Wish, was a part of our story as well. So I invite you to check out the table from The Natural Funeral and talk with her a little bit about natural transitions when we're done after the Q&A. There will be time. We'll do some presenting what CCALS is and introducing you through videos and story. Ron will share his testimony and how this came to be. And then there will be ample time for questions and discussions. So let this be a forum for you to learn and express what you have to share. Come on in and come on down, folks. There's still some folks coming in. I want to say thank you to folks who've come from Denver and Fort Collins and Colorado Springs to be here today. The people that were the circle of care for my dad. It's always amazing how 12 years can go by and it still touches my heart. We're going to open with a video poem called The Floor Plan, written by Jessie Levine, who was diagnosed with ALS in New Hampshire at 35 and died just a year ago at 51. Her mother, Carolyn, is now one of our star volunteer caregivers. So the impact that this work makes on those such as Jessie and her mom, we invite you to just sink into Jessie Levine's words.
The Floor Plan by Jessie Levine. On the porch of the ALS patient leans the shovel used by friends and neighbors to clear safe passage, for they know the 30 feet from garage to front door is a gauntlet in the winter. In the mudroom of an ALS patient, the shoehorn hangs ready to send and receive, for it is more efficient and takes up less room than a bench. In the living room of an ALS patient, the couch offers blankets and Afghans. for she is even more warmed by the special people who provided them than by the blankets themselves. In the kitchen of an ALS patient, everything remains on the counter, and she wonders why she ever bothered to put away the Cuisinart or crock pot or stand mixer after every use. In the refrigerator of an ALS patient, the jar lids are loose, for getting the threads right requires coordination, and she wants easy access to the peanut butter. In the freezer of an ALS patient, there is ice cream, for like Gretel, she needs fattening. In the linen closet of an ALS patient, the sheets and towels are some kind of folded, for perfectly stacked linen closets are overrated, and the sheets and the towels don't judge. In the bedroom of an ALS patient, the laundry is clean and accessible in the laundry basket, for if she could fold her clothes, she'd fold the towels too. In the bathroom of an ALS patient, the razor has been replaced by Nair, setting off visions of palm trees and rum punch. In the house of an ALS patient, the glass is half full, for otherwise it is too heavy to carry.
There are so many distinguishing marks that set compassionate care ALS aside or apart or above. And one of them that comes to mind in listening to Jesse's words is that I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've heard any one of our team refer to the folks that we have the honor of walking alongside as patients. It's not part of the heart and soul of what it is that we agree to and covenant with our families. And so I just highlight that as a way of saying we have friends, we have folks, we have families, we have folks that touch us deeply, and we also understand that isn't to minimize the level at which folks living with ALS are patients and have to have extraordinary patience as well. Here today, we are truly an uncommon bunch. This is an uncommon disease. It demands an uncommon commitment to live, to care, and to love, with ALS in the house, and ALS is in the house. If you are here, ALS has impacted and touched your life in one way or another. All of us together, we bear this indelible mark of being moved, touched by this disease. And while much of it is hard and heavy, there's really something incredibly powerful that compassionate care ALS brings to the table, especially in increasingly difficult and uncertain times. There's something powerful about sharing stories together, about bearing each other's burdens, about not judging where people are or where they want to be, or how they manage or cope with the unfathomable. This sharing of our mortality, our vulnerability, and our grief is an act of solidarity. It is what compassion is about, and it is where service is born from. This is the deep care, the compassionate care for ourselves and for the families and the strangers. As I said, I met Ron 12 years ago when my dad was diagnosed and dying with ALS. In that time of watching him converse, bring the sacred conversations to our families, he somehow noticed and observed astutely, instinctively, what was most important to my dad, what was incredibly distressing for my mom, and the way that our family could and couldn't meet the circumstances that we were facing with this unpredictable and yet unrelenting, progressive, degenerative disease. Ron has an uncanny instinct and more ALS-specific expertise than anyone we had encountered. And 25 years in, more than anybody I know. In these years of our family seeking treatment and support, to have somebody sit in the living room and help us understand how maybe one small piece of rubber to help my dad in a chair go over a threshold might make the difference in how his day goes and the quality of his living. Something that seems so insignificant and that we would never have known, never have even known to have looked for. And if I think about the spiritual and the deep impact of the correlation between durable medical equipment that makes someone's life easier and keeps the quality of life, with the deep spiritual impact of the thresholds that we take every day, to go from ambulatory and walking to in a chair, to bedside, and to that final kind of now, how do we cross the threshold of this life into the next? This is so uncommon these days in a culture that's death terrified and phobic and grief illiterate, as Stephen Jenkinson says. For our family, it made all the difference. 2 years ago, I joined this team, and if you can imagine 20 of the most extraordinary people who have joined Ron in this work, standing right here because they are here. And the work that they have done with thousands of families over 25 years is amazing. It's beyond what we can even speak or share today. And actually, it's beyond. I've only been a part of this team officially for 2 years in January. And I can say that how my folks, how these families have touched and changed my life is also a bit unspeakable. And then with the 20 staff, if you can imagine, another circle surrounding that staff of 20 volunteers that Ron has trained with incredible voices of wisdom and what it means to actually care. Not to treat, not to check boxes, not to lead somebody from one place to another, but really understand where they are and what's needed and respond in the best possible way. I've heard ALS described as a disease of 1,000 faces because it presents so incredibly uniquely with each person. In the gatherings that we do online, I've heard people call it excruciating, awful, horrible, cruel, unlike any other illness, hopeless, traumatic, a death sentence, the diagnosis that everyone hopes for, a diagnosis that leaves everyone hoping for brain cancer, MS, Lyme's, anything else. It's hard to imagine who on earth might think of this as a calling and then devote 25 years of sweat and tears and day in and day out showing up. And he inspires that in his staff, and the staff that he has does exactly that. It's uncommon. And we get to come to Colorado now. Colorado is my home. And so to be in this theater with this group of people and to have a local staff, Luke in the back and James here locally, it's really lovely to have a team of people building on the dream of expanding access to this kind of care. Today we're going to feature just a few things: how we tend to families, how we build networks, and the services that we provide. We're going to open with a video clip of a young family that was recently shot at the Retreat Center in Massachusetts. This is a video clip of Justin and Megan.
When he first got diagnosed, I was lost. We didn't know what to do. The doctors are good to tell you your diagnosis and what medication or trials you need to go on. You don't know what your house needs. You don't know how to function. You don't know how to live day to day. You don't know anything. We thought that it was over for us already. We thought it was impossible. And when you came in and you started telling us what the possibilities were in the house, then he started envisioning how we could keep moving.
It's very difficult. It takes a strong support system, CCALS, and a lot of energy. We don't get very much from the doctors. We rely a lot on CCALS.
Everything's getting more exhausting for Justin. Everything takes a lot more energy. We would be nowhere without everything that you've provided with us, with ramps and portable shower. All the simple tasks are very, very difficult now. So we started using the Hoyer lift full time to get him in and out. And that has been a huge help. I don't know if he would have been able to get in and out of bed without that. So that was the first piece of equipment that proved to be, a necessity just from day one of meeting you guys.
It's a tough thing to accept. It took me a while to accept it, but when I did, I started to live again.
I just can't comprehend how anybody does this without you guys.
The next two clips that you'll see back to back, Dr. Merit Shikovitz from Mass General Hospital, she speaks to her encounter, first meeting with Ron. And what I would like to say about these two clips is if you look at Dr. Shikovitz and you also look at Dr. Laura Foster at Anschutz and her collaboration now with what Compassionate Care is bringing to Colorado, to be able to reach out, and one of Ron's visions to bring this compassionate care and the rubric of care that actually has heart and soul, that we come from a place of connectivity, and when we feel our separation and isolation, there are ways to keep that connection alive with ourself, with our loved one, with our community, and with the world around us. So to speak into a medical system, and especially these days, it's too much to speak to right now, but it's an important part of this work to collaborate with systems of care, hospice, home health, clinics, people who are in the home regularly, CNAs. There's just so much that goes into surrounding someone with a full circle of care. So you'll see Dr. Shikovitz, and that here in that, what CCALS longs to do with the healthcare professions. And then you'll also hear Lisa Genova, award-winning author. And I think in some ways her books, Still Alice and Every Note Played, which have made a huge impact in popular culture, speak to how it is we might move our awareness and our collective consciousness towards care, towards open conversations around mortality, death and dying, and full bore living. How do you keep living until you don't? How do you dance your dying? How do you drum until you can't drum? How do you paint until you can't paint? How do you keep that living going? So I think Lisa Genova speaks powerfully to this culture that I think compassionate care also brings. And then after these videos, we'll bring Ron Hoffman up so you can actually hear from the source himself.
Good evening. I'm Merit Sikovich, Chair of Neurology and Director of the Healy and AMG Center for ALS at Mass General Hospital. I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person, but I'm delighted to share my experience and my thoughts about Compassionate Care ALS and Ron Hoffman in particular. I was really fortunate to meet Ron when he first was taking care of one of my patients, Mr. Heald, as a caregiver, and to see him grow as someone who is just extraordinary in what he does for people and families living with ALS. When they started the foundation, we were working very closely together to really meet the needs of people living with ALS. Ron and his team in the home, and us at the clinic. And it really is just extraordinary. Now, fast forward a couple of decades, every person that we see, we tell them about Compassionate Care ALS, and we work together as a team. So when Ron and his team are in the home, if they see that there's something that someone needs, they'll call us and they'll say, we think they need this. Or vice versa, if I see someone in the clinic who might need something, I'll say, I know exactly the foundation and the team that can help you, and connect them with Ron. And he's like that with everybody. It's really about what people need. He's there, no limits. Anything they need, whether it's equipment, whether it's spiritual, whether it's help with insurance, there's really nothing that Compassionate Care ALS doesn't do to help people living with ALS. I was so excited when they expanded to New York to take care of people with ALS in that area, and then to Philadelphia. Used to always say we need to clone Ron Hoffman and his amazing team, because they get it. They get what this illness is, and they get about being there for people where they are, and they're just extraordinary. So it's just really a delight to know that they're also now going to be expanding in Colorado. And my dream, and I know their dream, is that they're going to be in every single state, helping people no matter where they live with ALS. So congratulations to Compassionate Care ALS. I'm so thankful for all you do for our patients and patients living everywhere throughout the United States. And have a great event tonight.
I'm Lisa Genova, and I'm a neuroscientist in training, but for a long time now I've been a writer. And I write about people living with neurological diseases and disorders and mental illness who tend to be ignored, feared, or misunderstood. And I write novels because I believe that stories give us the opportunity to have some compassionate awareness. So I met Ron Hoffman back in 2015 or 16. I was beginning the research for my novel about a concert pianist with ALS. I'd been doing lots of reading, and I started reaching out to people in the ALS community, and everyone I reached out to, whether it was a social worker, someone with it, or a physician, all of those people said, you've got to talk to Ron Hoffman. So I sent him an email, and he called me within 5 minutes. And I knew in that very first conversation, in the first words, that this man was going to be pivotal to me understanding ALS, crucial to me being able to tell the truth under the imagined circumstances of my story, and that we would probably become very dear friends. So the nature of the work at Compassionate Care ALS and the group of people that Ron has assembled, it's really so different. These are folks who are showing up at the home and spending real time. These people take the time to develop relationships with the folks who have ALS and their families. And there's a love there. I mean, there is genuine care. I mean, compassionate care. What a perfect name for this organization, because that is what I witness over and over and over again. And that is as important as any device or treatment or medicine or surgery that we have right now for ALS. And Compassionate Care ALS does that. It's magical, truly. I encourage you to go find out more at CCALS.org. Get to know who they are and support them. Tell your community that they are there. If you hear of anyone who's been diagnosed or struggling with living with ALS, let them know. Say, hey, there's this place called Compassionate Care ALS, and I hear really great things about them, and they can help you.
Well, Brenda, thank you so much. I've been waiting years to get her to speak on our behalf. She speaks so incredibly well on the nature of our work and what we do. I want to thank everyone for being here. This is another dream that I've had many, many years ago. I had many families out here. You know, the first family I met through my friend Keith, who had a friend who had a friend who had ALS, and Keith said, can you assist? And I said, sure. And one family became another family and another family and another family. And after several years, I had to stop because of the resources. I didn't have the capacity to keep doing that. But I knew one day I wanted to be back here in Colorado, in Boulder. Boulder is incredibly important to me. I have dear friends here. I have community here. And if there was any place in the country that I wanted to expand, it would be here because I have resources. And I want to thank a lot of folks who are here, my friends, for showing up. Means so much. Again, thank you, Brenda, James, Luke, Jeffrey, Keith, Tom, who's not here, and many others. Most importantly, I want to thank the families who've shown up here today. It's not lost on me on sometimes how difficult it is to get out and about. Sometimes it's really hard. And for the other organizations who are represented here from different hospice agencies, care agencies, there's a member of the city council here. Thank you so much. One thing I want to share, many people have a sense of what ALS can look like, the difficulties. I mean, I personally can't imagine what it must be like to receive such a diagnosis. It's got to be incredibly traumatic, and yet not nearly enough attention is focused on that. So in my experience, we like to meet people early on because it allows us to build relationships. And relationships are at the forefront of what it is we do as an organization. Not just for our families, but for other healthcare organizations. You saw Merit Shakovitz. Merit was Gordon's neurologist in 1997. And we go back 25 years. We've been able to create a house call program at MGH, which is second to none. We've got lots of national attention through that, where a nurse or a nurse practitioner goes into the home with one of our staff. How wonderful is that? The relationships we build with many different agencies, the relationships we build with our families. You know, this work started when I became a caregiver for a man named Gordon Heald in 1997, who I worked part-time for. And little did I know, when I said yes to would you move in, how it was going to impact and change my life. As we were living with ALS, we would get information from the two organizations at the time. We'd read it and look at each other and scratch our head because it just seemed irrelevant to our circumstance. No disrespect, it was just something's missing here. So a seed was planted in my mind. There needs to be a different way. Little did I know what that way was. About a month before Gordon passed away, I sat with him and his wife, Betsy, and suggested we put a fund together in Gordon's name. And after 5 or 6 minutes, they said yes. And then I said, well, before you say yes, what is it you want to do? Do you want to support research or help people? Thank goodness they said, let's help people. And through that, we created the Gordon T. Heald ALS Fund, metaphorically speaking, also known as Ron's Lemonade Stand, because I was just out there trying to help people. I really had no plan. As time went on, after 2.5 years, the Gordon T. Heald ALS Fund birthed Compassionate Care ALS. I just outgrew it. For many years, was doing all the work by myself. Until now, where we have a staff of 20, plus my management team, plus extraordinary resources around the country. Trauma specialists, folks who specialize in psychology, psychiatry, coaching, where we're able to really connect people to give additional support. And, you know, we work with families all over Massachusetts, obviously, all over New England, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, 40-some states around the United States, many countries around the world. You know, sometimes my board would say, Ron, how do you keep doing this? I just haven't learned to say no. I mean, how do you say no? That said, some people say yes to everything that we're bringing, and some say no. One of the first things, and it's really important for the families who are here, when I meet families, the first thing I share with them is, I'm not here to tell you what you don't want to know, which is incredibly important. The art of language is so important. Some people will look at me and go, well, why are you here? You know? My friend John Imber, I met John, and I had no idea who he was in the world, but John was considered the finest contemporary painter in America. And we became very fast friends. As I was going up to the third floor co-op, he lived in an artist co-op, been there for 30 years. I'm saying to myself, how is this man going to stay here? And I go into his home, and I thought I was in a loft in New York City or something. Paintings everywhere. His home was a studio. His wife, his son. I looked at John. I said, John, I'm not here to tell you what you don't want to know. And he laughed. He said, Ron, I want to know everything. I said, beautiful. So let's start with accessibility. And that's where we were. As time went by, John would call me when he had questions about this choice or that choice. And his metaphor was, Ron, I need color. He was a painter. Palettes filled with colors. His way was, I need color on this issue or that issue. We would sit and we would talk. Another incredibly important person that I met in time was Mariah Fenton Gladys. Mariah, a Gestalt therapist, revered in that world. And this is important from the standpoint of how uniquely different ALS can be from one person to the next. You know, a lot of people want to go online. There's a lot of drama online. Lots. And, you know, I met Mariah, and literally one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. And yet, Mariah was diagnosed with ALS, told she had a 10% chance of living 2 years, and never bearing children. Well, Mariah went home, locked herself in a room, kind of became her own client. Literally, her husband, his name is Ron, her to-be husband, they weren't married then, would bring her meals. In literally 2 weeks, she kind of became her own client and just hibernated, did what she had to do. After 2 weeks, she came out, found Ron, said, honey, we're going to live our life. He said, beautiful, let's live. And they did for 37 years. Why? I have no idea. And she birthed 2 sons. She found her own way. She found her own path. You know, no one can tell anyone exactly what this is going to look like. You know, I have no idea, nor does anyone else, what it must be like to be living with an ALS diagnosis. Even someone else with ALS, are there commonalities? For sure. The art of language is incredibly important when we're sitting with folks, when we're engaged with other people, and that's what we try to do. It's the art of showing up. How do we be present? How do we truly, truly listen? How do we bring our hearts to the table? And it's something that we continually work on. Our mission, which is extensive, but the essence of it is to enhance quality of life, to enhance the quality of one's life. And when invited, explore end of life. If we're able to enhance the quality of life of the individual who's living with this diagnosis, then it stands to reason we're enhancing the quality of life of the caregiver, of the family, of the community. The caregiver, the tender, the carer, is equally as important to us as the person with this diagnosis. Oftentimes, that's the person that gets left behind. The dynamics that we see with families are absolutely extraordinary. There's not one aspect of the human psyche that's not touched by this. And as Brenda said, our work is about tending to and walking alongside as much or as little as someone wishes. Again, you know, it's about relationships. And that's what we strive to create. Yet, not to be attached to any particular outcome, which can be challenging. If we can offer calm guidance and awareness, if I'm attached to anything, maybe it's that. Just to be able to walk in someone's home, to sit, be present, find out who people are. It's building relationships. Hence, I'm not here to tell you what you don't want to know. My counsel You notice I don't say advice. Advice is my definition of advice is me telling someone what I think they should do. I never do that. Counsel is a different matter. Counsel is, this is what's possible. This is how this can be done. You know, along the way, whether we're living with ALS or we're just living life, we have choices and decisions to make. What does it mean to say yes to something? What does it mean to say no to something? And oftentimes people just make a decision with no real inquiry, with no real thought. And yet what I've learned when folks are navigating these choices and decisions living with ALS is whether they say yes to something or no to something, there's consequences and ramifications for those choices. That said, does it not make sense to do that inquiry into that, to make a conscious choice, to make a conscious decision? So a lot of our work is centered around just helping people navigate all the complexities, which are numerous, in living with ALS. We walk in some homes and the dysfunction is beyond compare. Honestly, sometimes maybe there's not a lot to do. You know, I mean, we're nearing 1,000 families that we visit. The only positive I know that came out of COVID is we're able to work virtually, work well virtually. That's why we're able to work with folks around the country and around the world. That's how we'll be able to continually do here in Colorado, because we will build this. The families who are here with us tonight, if you would like for us to follow up with you, we're happy to do that. Start with an intake with Luke. We'll follow up with me on a virtual call to start. And we can assess lots of needs, and there's so much we can bring, which I'll speak to in just a second. Being there. Just being there. You know, oftentimes that's lost. Sometimes there's nothing to do. That can be a hard concept because we want to fix, right? Everything we do is an invitation. You can say yes or you can say no. One of the things I learned long, long ago, my good buddy Doug Oakley, who was diagnosed with ALS, he wanted to get some counseling. And I introduced him to a colleague, and he went, and he called me a few days later, how'd it go? He said, got everything I need. I said, when's your next appointment? He said, nope, done. I said, really? He said, yeah. So I said, okay. And I remember, he joined my board shortly thereafter, just many years ago. We were eating dinner or late lunch at a local restaurant. We were sitting at the bar. And he was still very ambulatory. And we're sitting there, and our food came. I slid the salt and pepper over to him, and I heard silence. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. He said, Ron, you ever do that again, I'll knock you out. Okay? And right there, I knew. He didn't ask for me to do that. From that moment on, I learned to always ask permission before I do something for someone. I mean, Doug was still living his life. One of the largest challenges we all face when we're faced with something like an ALS diagnosis or any other is, how do we learn to live our life differently? That's the challenge. It's not about not living life. It's how do we live life differently? Mariah lived for 37 years. My friend Bob is here, whose wife Ruthie passed away 15, 17 years ago, I think. I was hoping my friend Pat would be here. I'm not sure, she came in late. Pat's been living with ALS for 15 or 16 years. I introduced her and Ruthie way back when. It was extraordinary. Who knows what's possible? So being mindful and buying into what you read online. You know, our neurologists, our physicians do the very best. They have incredible hearts, but they're also trained as clinicians. Sometimes that heart and soul piece can be really, really difficult. You know, the white elephant in the room is mortality. All doctors aren't trained in navigating that, because all of a sudden we get this diagnosis, my God, my life is over. How do our neurologists, how do our physicians, how do we learn to be with that to continue to live our life. That's what we do our best at in attempting to navigate those extraordinary waters with people. So, a lot of what we do. In time, we'll bring as many of our resources here as possible. There are a couple items of equipment you saw online. I can tell you right now, if anyone needs one of those, you got it. You know, these are items that do enhance quality of life. So durable medical equipment is a big piece of what we're able to do. And I'm a huge believer in quality. These are things you won't get through insurance or pretty much anywhere else. Communication is incredibly important. In time, if you have issues with communication and there's no support, we can help support that. Be it through Christine Copley, who is I call her my communication guru, and through Bridging Voice, which is an incredible organization in New York that we work closely with, and they too work with families around the country. We have a van program back east that we're able to loan vehicles to individuals for a weekend or a week or help them get to a clinic if needed. Medicare can always support that. We have incredible gatherings. Brenda might have spoken to that. James will speak more to our gatherings and our speaker series. We have an incredible volunteer program. Simply put, and I'm missing a whole lot here, the support that we bring the families is extensive. Extensive. And we don't have a list of everything. I'm not a huge fan of lists. You know, each family is unique in their own way. Some people need others, things that others don't. So if we can make things happen, connect them to the right resources, that's what we do. Two of the things I'm incredibly proud of, one is the house call program with Dr. Shakovitz and the Healy Clinic at MGH. And the other is our retreat center, which was an incredible dream. And we'll show a clip here in a second, but this is a dream that I had years and years ago, shortly after Gordon passed. And Gordon and Betsy had a summer house, and I asked permission if a family could come stay for the weekend, and that was the impetus for creating a retreat center because I saw the value and the beauty in it. So it was something that, again, my friend Doug, when he joined our board, he was a huge fan of it. And it was through him and his wife, Patty, the initial seed money came from. It's a place for people to come, families, couples, a place for caregivers. We have 3 accessible living spaces. It's a place for gatherings. But it was an incredible dream. We raised $3.4 million to buy a bed and breakfast and completely transform it. So we'll show that clip. Afterwards, we'll do some Q&A. And before we go there, I just want to make sure I've got everything. Thank you all for coming. This is really big, and my heart tears. So for our families, you are invited to come visit us. We do not charge for people to stay with us. You know, donations are always welcome because it does cost to maintain the place, but it's pretty extraordinary. We've had folks from all over the country come here. We've had hundreds and hundreds of families since we opened. Even during COVID, we'd have one family at a time. This is available. So James and Brenda, can you guys come on up here? You know what? James, Brenda, why don't y'all stay down there and I'll stay up here? You know, I refer to ALS as the uninvited guest. Who knew? And yet, our work, our mission is just to really help people navigate all of this. And that's what we so try to do. To bring the sacred into this extraordinary circumstance, because that's what it is. You know, it's incredibly sacred work. Your circumstance is in that place of the unknowing and the mystery. So again, how do we learn to live our lives differently?
So a couple of years ago, we received a grant from the Adira Foundation, and this is something that Ron had wanted to do for a long time. Families would come to him after their journey with ALS and say, how can I help? How can I give back? I want to walk with others who are going through this. And we really didn't have a means for that. There was just too much going on, too many moving pieces and parts. And so finally, 2 years ago, we were able to start the volunteer program. And we brought 20 people through the training. And honestly, it became so much more than a volunteer program, simply people who are resources to help. But actually, we became a circle, kind of a little community of friends, really. And many of the people who are part of that group had recently lost a loved one to ALS and were tender and needed to be held and needed to grieve. And so we've been grieving together and healing. And then they've also been there for families who are at various stages of the experience. So it's been really wonderful to spend time with this group, get to know them. And in fact, this weekend out in Falmouth, we're having a volunteer retreat at the center. We're all going to get together and celebrate a little bit and give thanks for the gifts that they've given. So that's been fabulous. And thank you, Ron, for helping to make that happen. And Brenda also has been a big part of putting that program together. And, you know, people were kind of like, gee whiz, we're doing all this, like we're learning all these ways of caring and showing up, these Zen practices and different ways of holding counsel and holding space and being with people. And they were like, you know, we had no idea that this was going to be so thorough and complete. And it's really, the reason it has been that is because this is a quality of care that you kind of have to develop. It's a personal growth. There's a journey involved for us to be able to really be there and learn to be present and really to walk alongside people with an open heart and without an agenda and without carrying a bunch of our own baggage along the way. So to that end, we also provide weekly gatherings for different aspects of our community. We have mothers of ALS, we have men and women of ALS, we have caregiver to caregiver gatherings, and we do these in order to provide a forum and a counsel container, really a place where people can simply be together and share their stories and not giving advice or telling people what to do, but simply being heard and being accepted without judgment, to be able to genuinely present yourself with whatever's going on, whatever's on your heart, whatever challenges or struggles you're going through, and also to celebrate the wonderful victories and the beauty that happens along the way, and to look for moments of joy and stretch those out whenever we can.
And James, can you talk to the speaker series that we do?
Yeah, and one of the things that we're doing now too, which is really outstanding, is monthly we bring in a speaker to provide inspiration to our community and to anyone in the world of ALS, or for that matter, anyone who's going through a challenging time, to come and listen to people like Roshi Joan Halifax, who is the head abbot of the Upaya Zen Center and a mentor and friend of Ron's, to bring in, Dr. Jakovitz will be doing a talk. We've brought in various experts in the field of ALS. People in this room, Jeffrey Duvall has done talks for us, and Tom Daly and friends of ours who have a lot to bring on the heart and soul level to provide for the for the caregivers, for the families, for the community, to be able to really show up for this, to really walk with their friends and be of genuine service. And that's what it's all about. So the speaker series is something, and please check out our website to find out what's coming next, but we try to do these on a monthly basis.
I figured out long ago, sometimes the institution of health care gets in the way of good care. When Gordon and Betsy said yes to the fund, and that was a seed, and yet, what am I creating here? And it, honestly, as time went on, it was because of people who I met, many out here who became my teachers, my mentors, my colleagues, my friends, that helped me remember what I already knew, which everyone in this room actually knows. We know how to do this work. We truly know how. It's in our bones, I believe. And to continue to do that, to continue to explore, to bring new ways to the world of healthcare, to bring trainings to our healthcare professionals. You know, what I learned, all home agencies are not created equal. It's all about who's walking in the door. And I know there's some extraordinary people in this room right now who are walking in the door. Those are the people I want walking in my door in support of me and my family. So it's just a continuation of finding new ways of bringing good work to the world.
Do we have any questions? Would anyone like
Someone must have a question. Yes, Luke, straight back.
While Luke is getting the mic back there, I just want to highlight that each of you have on the table one of the Cultivating Compassion series cards that has the information about our speaker series and the gatherings. If you are a part of an organization and taking a stack of those back with you to a place of your work for other families, please make those available to people and take what you need.
I guess this question is addressed to Ron and anybody else who wants to comment on it. It strikes me in my brief journey with this disease, which is going on 3 years next month, that there is a proliferation, is that a word? There's a lot of different resources, different quality, differing ease of accessibility. Some range from highly structured, unpleasantly institutional, to those that bring with them the compassion and the love and the care that I sense in this group. I guess I will get to a question, not a speech. Is there an effort amongst the care providers? I think, for example, of the Team Gleason Foundation. Think of the Les Turner Foundation. I think of Compassionate Care ALS that I'm just learning about. And I'm sure there are others that are not on the top of my mind at coordinating and seeking to make something bigger from the efforts of joining a few together. I'll just stop there. I hope I've been able to articulate a question in there somewhere. Thank you.
There's a space for everyone. Every once in a while we will get a referral. I talked to the director at Les Turner several weeks ago because I had a family in the Chicago area that needed additional support. There are many, many organizations out there. And my invitation to families, you can work with whomever you want. That said, I'm really not interested, and I'm just being honest here, I'm not interested in hearing from the organization about what it is this particular family wants or needs. I want to hear directly from the family. We spend a great deal of time fielding calls from maybe other organizations or physical therapists or occupational therapists saying that Mr. Jones needs this, this, and this. It turns out Mr. Jones really doesn't want this, this, or this. Sometimes what happens is we will get a call and Mr. Jones needs a particular item. Well, we've been in Mr. Jones' house and that item's not going to work there. So the value of actually being in the home, seeing what the home looks like, cultivating that relationship beyond just that ramp or that piece of equipment. You know, our model is uniquely different, and I can also say many organizations have attempted to knock off what we're doing. God bless them. I wish them well. But you must have the people in order to do, and the mission and maybe the vision to do what it is that we're doing. There's great groups out there, and I encourage people, work with whomever you want. But I've been doing this long enough to know there's not one aspect of the ALS experience that there's not something we can bring to an individual and family's table. Not one. Maybe it's a little bit. Oftentimes it's a great deal. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much for being here. I am so moved today. And I was wondering if the people who are local, a lot of the work that I do is connecting families. We get calls. I just had one the other week. And who do I talk to? Like, who are if you can raise your hand if you're local.
Well, I will tell you, Luke
where
is
do they
local.
go?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Luke is local,
Okay.
James is local, Brenda's local. The way this will work, I'm going to tell you how this works.
Okay.
All righty? You will inquire, take a card to the home office. You'll call the home office or send us an email. All right? If you have a particular family that you would like for us to meet, in that email, you just need to let us know that you have permission to introduce us to this family. Okay? We've got that contact after calling the main office, and we'll forward that to Luke. Luke will reach out to them to do intake. From there, it comes back to us to set up a virtual call or maybe an in-person call, depending on the circumstances. That's how that works. It's actually quite easy. There's a great deal that can be done virtually. I was amazed. And it just depends on the circumstances. In time, we'll have more individuals out here working as we build up. The more families we have, we'll have some senior care liaisons that go into the homes on a regular basis. Also, we're open to doing in-services for different hospice groups or like-minded organizations, just sharing what it is that we know about the work and just what our model is. And there's lots of resources we have there.
I'm Will Reller. And Ron, I wanted to ask you, would you stop in Missouri and visit my brother John and his wife Joyce? They are 76, and my brother John is retired, and he's got Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And he goes out on the farm every day, and he falls. And his wife is worried to death, but she can't stop him. So they just need so much counsel mm-hmm. about how to regulate their life. You know, he's losing his voice, so he doesn't have ALS, but a lot of the same symptoms. So how do you keep your package of care, compassionate care, only for ALS patients?
So one of my other dreams, and Lisa Genova can share this with you, is how do we create Compassionate Care America, where all neurologicals are welcome? Well, that takes a whole lot of resources, and it's not a dream I'm going to jump on in the moment, but that's who knows what's possible, right? Over the years, there are many neurologicals, PLS, which is like a pre-ALS, multi-systems atrophy, Parkinson's. We have many handfuls of non-ALS. I am happy to reach out to your brother, virtually, and have those conversations, or whatever that can look like, and we can certainly talk about it. Oftentimes, it's how an introduction is made as to whether or not we have the capacity, the time, the resources, and that's how we do that. Have I gotten calls before? We can't help you. Yes, because our resources are limited. But there's those exceptions, and you are an exception. I met Will many years ago, one of our families, a family Will was working with, Hani was his first name, Hani. Hani was from Egypt. And somehow I had met Hani. I don't know how, I can't remember. This is how many years? 17 years ago? 18 years ago? And that's how I met Will. And of course, Brenda. Okay? Question? Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, with the Colorado connection now, did I hear a reference briefly with a relationship with Anschutz and some local?
Well, the
here?
main connection at the moment is with Dr. Foster. That's how we met. I was introduced to Dr. Foster through Dr. James Berry at the Healy Clinic, colleague of Dr. Shakovitz. And Brenda and I met with her some time ago. Luke has actually been up to the clinic with one of our families numerous times. It's just cultivating that relationship, you know, whether or not we get to the point of having a release forum like we do with MGH for our families. You know, years and years ago, MGH would be referring many families my way, right? And I'd see an issue, I'd call MGH and let them know what was going on, and the response, well, Ron, we can't talk to you because of HIPAA. My response is, you referred them to me, for God's sakes, you know? There was a world before HIPAA. It was a much kinder, gentler world, I think. That said, since at the Healy Clinic, we have a release forum with all of our in common families. And yeah, so our relationship, probably 25, 30% of our census is through them. So we're pretty close. We will cultivate that relationship closer and closer. They've already sent many families to us so far.
Ron, you're doing this, I guess, kickoff or introductory session here in Colorado. What's the biggest thing people here could do to help get this thing really off the ground in Colorado?
Well, there's two things. If you know people living with ALS or communities, you can let them know we exist. Secondly, if you know individuals who want to support a really fine organization, nonprofit organization, let them know that we exist. You know, we exist through grant writing, through events, fundraising, through our newsletters, through many of our families over the years. That's how we do what we do. And, you know, I'll walk into a home and folks, Ron, what can we do? What can we do for you? I said, look, I'm not here for that. Let's talk about that down the road. But if they insist, I said, you know, for the moment, just tell your friends if they want to contribute to the cause, you know, introduce them to CCALS. You know, because everybody wants to help the family, right? And that's another whole huge piece that people are confronted. Here's a family living with ALS. Everybody wants to help. Well, everybody wanted to help Gordon and made my life even more busy than it was because it was exhausting. Everyone wants to do something. And how do you get that organized? That's a huge piece that we're able to bring. We can share with you, this is how you can do this. Whether it's online, whether it's getting your best friend to help coordinate everybody that wants to do things, putting lists together, etc. That's a huge piece of what we're able to help people navigate. But, you know, thank you for that. It's just, if you know people that want to support good work, you know, you can do that. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, don't hesitate in reaching out. Questions, thoughts, or concerns. And sometimes people don't know what those questions even are. You know, it's like being on an island by themselves. I mean, people's worlds are turned upside down. And for us, it's just, you know, walking in with an open heart, bringing some calm guidance and awareness. You do not have to recreate the wheel. For me, it's always a continuous work in progress on how to be there and how to sustain ourselves. You know, the support that we offer our families, whether it's trauma support, psychosocial support, all of that. The same support we offer to our staff, our team. I don't know a lot of organizations that offer staff what it is that we offer staff. Now, all of my staff doesn't say yes to it, but many do. I mean, you know, if you think about, and those in the world of hospice know what I'm talking about, what we see day in and day out, it can really stretch you. You know, it can be really difficult. And how do we work with that? How do we hold that or learn to let it go? Because there's someone else to see. You know, deep inquiry is incredibly important. I have to be incredibly familiar with the reality of my own mortality to do this work. And if you want to know how we create better work in this world, that we are tending to people with end-of-life issues, is to do our own work around it, to become comfortable with it, to come to the realization is, yeah, one day I'm going to die. Doesn't mean it has to be soon. Again, that's where if I'm unable to do this, my own work, how do I best show up for the families that I'm serving? I say I can't. So if this doctor or this healthcare professional isn't willing to do that, doesn't mean they're bad people, doesn't mean they don't have a good heart. It's just subject matter. It's that fear and that unwillingness to explore the reality of all of our lives. Will someday we get to go home and what that might mean for us. That's a big piece of what I do. I spend a lot of my time with some of our families that want to navigate that terrain.
I would like to simply acknowledge this circle here today and all the staff, all the tech folks doing the sacred tech, thank you. And all the, brought the flowers, without having to solve anything, but to be just simply present together. I know personally, I've known Ron a long time, but I know there's hundreds and hundreds of people that you might call team or family that have supported Compassionate Care ALS for all these years. So there's like all these little legs holding up this dream of more compassion, more kindness, more gentleness, which really does go beyond ALS, but as was mentioned earlier, hopefully goes back into America as well. And I want to acknowledge this space. It's just a great place to be. And the Arapaho and the Cheyenne that were here before we were, and really include all of this. And I just feel a healing today being with you all, even if I don't know you. And I want to just say thank you. And may we do our best and have some fun along the way.
There are copies of Bitterness is Not an Option from Mariah Fenton Gladys. There's also the collaborative work of Ron's story that was written and put together with James and Ron, and it's out there. So take what you can use and enjoy what's there in your continued exploration. And on your table are cards. If you have a family or you would like CCALS to reach out to somebody, you can fill that out and then make sure you leave it on the welcoming table so that Luke or I get that. It's really lovely to have all you here. And thank you, Ron, for your devotion.
Yeah, this really does mean a lot to me. I would not be standing here if my friend Jeffrey wasn't here, Keith, Tom, who's not here, other men who've shown up here who I've sat with over the years and who helped me remember what I already knew. My friend Jim and Troy, who are here. Jim's good friend, Mick, was a good friend of mine. And I knew Mick and his wife for a couple of years, I believe, as Mick was living with ALS. When I met Mick, kind of an intimidating guy. He had some most extraordinary sleeves on his arms, tattoos. Absolutely extraordinary. Kind of clean-shaved head, and, I heard he was a musician, a drummer. And he was also either a CPA or accountant. I go, whoa, this is an interesting mix. And we kept him working at home for as long as he wanted to work when his hands were even failing him. And so we're going to go out with this piece that Jim did with Mick long ago. They were bandmates together.
shape I'm in. You won't catch me crying, cause I just can't win. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I don't care what you say. I don't play the same games you play. Cause I've been talking to some people that you call your friends, and it seems to me there's a means to it, and they don't care anymore. And as for me, I can sit here and bide my time. I got nothing to lose if I speak my mind. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I don't care what you say. We never play by the same rules anyway. I won't be there anymore. So get out of my way, step aside. I got better things to do with my time. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. And I don't care now what you say. Cause every day I'm feeling fine with myself. And I don't care now what you say. Cause I'm doing alright by myself. Cause I know. And I remember all the times I tried so hard, but you laughed in my face cause you held the cards. I don't care anymore. And I really ain't bothered what you think of me. All I want of you is just to leave me be. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I don't care what you say. I never did believe you much anyway. I won't be there anymore. So get out of my way, step aside. I got better things to do with my time. I don't care anymore. You hear, I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. You listen, I don't care anymore. No more. 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 No more.
Thank you for being here, everybody.
See you.